Sorry, the video cut off because I reached the gigabyte limit. And I'm reviewing the interview that Al from the Hallelujah channel, the Hallelujah podcast that was broadcast by Radioactive San Diego in August 16, 2006. An interview that Al did with Barry Swicker, who is the author of Towers of Deception, the media cover-up of 9/11, which was the Bible of the 9/11 Truth Movement. So I'm just continuing with the review of the interview here.
Governor Keane, why? And he said that he thought it was fear of political reprisals, and it was an election year, and the Bush administration was kind of afraid of political fallout, and which I thought was a weak excuse. But what do you expect from Governor Keane? But
well, actually, Alan, it's ludicrous, because if America was the innocent victim of a fanatical attack by crazy Muslims, wouldn't looking into it and getting more facts about them, and actually enough facts to bring them to trial and so on, wouldn't that be a big boost for the Bush administration?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's not only a weak argument; it's actually contradictory.
Yeah. And then also beyond examining the evidence that you have for this, then you say, well, where's the evidence that supports the official story? And because there isn't a whole lot, really, when it comes right down to it. With NATO, there was some story about in your book about NATO and how they have the information, but they're not going to get public with it, or something to that effect.
Yes, well, the NATO invoked Clause 5 of its charter, which it had never invoked before. That's the clause that if one country is attacked, it shall be considered an attack on all the countries of NATO. And they did that on the basis of closed-door testimony that the American representative allegedly gave to prove that bin Laden and al-Qaeda were behind 9/11. But to this minute that we are speaking, that proof has never been made public by the NATO Council, by the United States of America, or by any of the NATO countries. It just hasn't been done. And so the basis of American troops going in Afghanistan, and now there's 1,500 Canadian troops in Afghanistan, it's a non-existent basis. It's actually an illegal invasion of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
We'll leave Iraq out of it for the moment. This is just one of the many huge holes in the official unfolding of history as it's presented to us by the establishment and by the establishment media. And it's so gargantuanly off base that most people can't imagine that it is. It's like the Truman Show, writ large.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what he talks about the Truman Show. That movie, the Truman Show, which is a movie from I think in the late 90s or whatever, early 2000s. In which the actor Jim Carrey, I think was his name, the comic actor. He is like he lives in this world where like it's all manufactured. It's a manufactured media illusion based on optics, on perception management. So that is what Barry Swicker is talking about when he talks about the synthetic environment created by the media, right? Which now in 2022, the media is not as powerful as it was back in 2006, because now in 2022, there is social media, which is not under the control of the media establishment that existed back then. Back then the media establishment was more dominant. The press and the television, the cable television press, and whatever. The internet was more internet websites. I mean, it was the media back then had more centralized control, which is not the case now. Now the media has sort of like lost a lot of the control it used to have. It's not as easy for the establishment, for the state to shape public opinion, because there is such social media platforms they can't control, really. I mean, there is control on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and Reddit and WhatsApp and Telegram and all these different apps that you can use, but I mean, all you need is a mobile phone, and this is an old mobile phone from 2015. This is my old phone from 2015 that I got, for 500 crowns, because it's all I could afford. But as long as you have one of these, you can just pretty much bypass the media. I mean, and you can just go on the internet and find out what you need to find out. You don't need to go to the media. I never watch SVT, whatever SVT. I ignore the Swedish media. The only Swedish media I read is the newspaper put out by my friends at my Trotskyist friends at Marxist.se, the Revolution newspaper that they put out. That's about the only Swedish media I look at, or like their YouTube channel or whatever. The Marxists or World Socialist website. I don't pay attention to the establishment Swedish media at all. They're not gonna pay attention to me, so I don't pay attention to them.
Well, that makes me sort of go into a little bit of the psychology of 9/11, and Ken Jenkins has spoken eloquently on the psychological aspects of this, as well as other people, and it clearly is a psyop or a psychological operation on the American people and on the world, really, to instill fear and to stop thinking, really, just stop thought and move into instinctive, fear-based understanding. And I'm kind of interested in your I'm interested in your take on the difference between knowing and believing, especially when it comes to journalists.
Yes. Before I respond, Alan, again, your voice is so weak. I'm having to really strain to hear you.
I know that it's going out fine on the thing because I've got my mic up, and the sound is better through my mic. It's when I talk into the phone, it doesn't sound as good.
Right, but like right now, when you just said that, I'm hearing you a whole lot better.
Okay.
So you'll just have to split the diff there.
Okay.
My son's in audio post-production.
Old technology.
Sound, and I just want to remind you that at times your voice is so light that it's really a strain for me to catch what you're saying. But the psychology now, and I'm glad you mentioned Ken Jenkins, because Ken and I are great friends, and we have dialogues about all sorts of stuff. And he has been one of the earliest ones to send me a very friendly criticism about Chapter 3, which is about denial and psychology. It's titled 9/11 Truth is Hidden in Plain Sight, 2001 Tricks for Avoiding the Obvious. Mm-hmm. And I think Ken has, this is what I was looking for on my email when before the program started, is to look for the exchange that Ken and I had. And I think he made a very valid point. He said he likes the book, but he said he was disappointed that there's not enough attention he was talking actually about Chapter 5, about the shame of Noam Chomsky and the left gatekeepers. But so I have to correct myself. He was talking about Chapter 5. And he said he was disappointed that there wasn't enough attention paid to the fact that people in the left media and in left organizations are perfectly capable of being blindsided by denial, by fear, by the usual rationalizations to which us human beings can fall victim to. And I think he was right in that criticism. I told him, I said, it's unfortunate. I didn't mean to leave the impression that people on the left are not human beings who have the usual failings that we all have, where we tend to accept the first story we hear, and then our left brain rationalizes to back that story up, even if it's obviously baloney,
right.
Steven Pinker called. And also we figured out a way, and Ken has already agreed with me today in an email. I said it would be so easy for me to fix that chapter, because all I would have to do, and I think I'll do it if there's a second edition, I will do it if there's a second edition, is to say that all the typical pitfalls of us human beings to rationalize and deny apply to these people in the left media. Yeah. And they are fully explored in Chapter 3.
Yeah, left media was hostile to 9/11 Truth, especially after Noam Chomsky exercised his influence on left media in the United States, at least. Then it spread to Canada, other countries, Europe, everywhere. Independent media, left media was pretty much hostile to 9/11 Truth. It was just like that. It was just not. I mean, and again, I think Barry Zwicker, if you read that Chapter 3 in his book, he talks about how, if I remember correctly, I read the book years ago, but I do remember the whole issue of, if the left went down that road, the implications of going down that road would have been such radical that it would have forced them to become more radical. And a lot of the left is reformist, or not really, radical. See what I'm saying? So like there is my Marxist friends are a little bit more clinical and rational about this. They have, there is reformists, there is left centrists, and then there is revolutionaries. Right. Barry Zucker does not use that language. But he does mention, how the left, the people who run the left media, they were afraid of going down a certain road. Like, best not to dwell too much on this 9/11 stuff and just 9/11 truth stuff, and just ignore it, right? Because it's more comfortable to ignore it than to face it. So that was the problem with left media, and Noam Chomsky exploited that. Noam Chomsky exploited that in order to like promote the marginalization of the 9/11 truth movement.
That's all I had to say.
Right.
But it's a good point.
Well, and it's interesting too, because you break down the what happens on the inside of a person when these horrific things happen. It infantilizes the American consciousness, so that we then need the daddy figure of Bush and whoever to tell us that, these bad people are out there and we're going to keep you safe, and don't worry, little child, you'll be fine. Your daddy's here. And
yeah,
it's really important. It's to know, to see that, and get some perspective on that process.
Well, I think so. I myself have been very. I don't know why. My mother had problems with depression, and she had a lot of psychosomatic illness. I mean, I loved her dearly, but as a child, I became aware on some level of my mother's difficulties, and perhaps that which was what led me to become interested in psychology. And I remember around the age of 12, in the newspaper, there was just a single, it was on the comic page of all places, a single panel called Mirror of Your Mind. It was quite well done. They packed quite a message into each one of those panels. I remember reading those as a kid. And of course, in university, I took psychology, was very interested in it, and I followed it ever since. Subscribed to Psychology Today for a long time, but it's become a really downstream thing. There's nothing much in it anymore.
Yeah.
But and as a social activist all my life, I've kept running into all these excuses that people trot out to poo-poo that we're in danger from nuclear proliferation, to poo-poo that there's anything called global warming and everything. So I've been up against this in a very practical way all my life, where people find all these excuses for not looking at things, not believing of things, looking at them but looking away, saying, well, you're right, but I'm not going to do anything about it, which ultimately you hope that people will see things that are very important to the lives of themselves, their children, and the planet, and furthermore, they will decide